The discovery: a 15-year-old Austrian boy stood in a cramped movie theater in Graz, watching Hercules flicker across a worn screen. Reg Park, the British bodybuilder turned actor, flexed across ancient Greek landscapes, embodying power, success, and impossible transformation. Arnold Schwarzenegger walked out of that theater with something crystallizing in his mind, not just a dream, but a system. A code. A set of principles that, if followed with absolute discipline, could transform anyone from nobody into somebody. Over the next 50 years, Arnold would test these principles across bodybuilding, business, Hollywood, and politics. Each domain revealed the same pattern. Success wasn't mysterious. It was algorithmic, repeatable, achievable through specific mental frameworks applied with relentless consistency. This is the code Arnold Schwarzenegger used to build an empire. Not the public persona, the actual psychological architecture beneath everything he accomplished. Rule 1. Vision before reality. Arnold's first principle: see the outcome with such clarity that the present becomes irrelevant. In 1966, Arnold sat in his tiny Austrian apartment and wrote down exactly what his life would look like in 10 years. Not vague hopes, precise details. He would be Mr. Olympia by age 23. He would be living in America by age 21. He would be a millionaire before 30. He would transition to movies before 35. To most people, these were fantasies. Arnold's friends were training to become carpenters, police officers, tradesmen, respectable Austrian professions. Arnold was claiming he'd become a world-famous bodybuilder in a country that didn't care about bodybuilding, then somehow leverage that into movie stardom. But Arnold operated from a different psychological framework. He didn't see the future as uncertain, he saw it as inevitable, provided he executed the necessary steps. I visualized myself standing on the Mr. Olympia stage holding the trophy before I even qualified for my first competition, Arnold later explained. The vision was so clear, so real in my mind, that actually achieving it felt like watching a recording of something that had already happened. This wasn't positive thinking. It was psychological pre-programming. By visualizing the outcome thousands of times, Arnold's brain started treating it as reality. The subconscious mind, unable to distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience, began solving for the imagined future rather than processing current limitations. When people said his goals were impossible, Arnold genuinely didn't understand. In his mind, these outcomes already existed. The only question was execution timeline. This principle applied across every domain. Before accepting the Terminator role, Arnold had already visualized himself as an iconic villain. Before running for governor, he'd mentally rehearsed his inauguration speech. Before negotiating real estate deals, he'd visualized himself signing contracts from a position of strength. The lesson: most people fail because they can't see the destination clearly enough to navigate toward it. Arnold succeeded because he made the future so vivid that the present became just a transit point. Rule 2. Weaponize your disadvantages. Arnold's second principle: turn every supposed weakness into a strategic advantage. His thick Austrian accent? Every acting coach, agent, and studio executive said it was a career killer. "You'll never work in American films with that voice," they repeated endlessly. Arnold's response: make the accent iconic. Study how his unique vocal quality could enhance characters rather than distract from them. The Terminator's otherworldly menace was amplified by sounding foreign. Conan the Barbarian felt more authentic with a European accent. Even comedy roles benefited. The accent added unexpected humor through contrast. His massive physique? Hollywood said he was too big for leading roles, that his body was freakish rather than attractive. Arnold turned this into his superpower. He became the only actor who could credibly play characters of superhuman strength and intimidation. The physique that supposedly limited him actually created a market category where he had zero competition. His foreign origin? Instead of hiding his Austrian background, Arnold weaponized it as part of his brand, the immigrant who conquered America through pure will. the outsider who proved anyone could succeed. This narrative resonated powerfully during political campaigns and business ventures. But the principle went deeper than surface traits. Arnold applied this framework to actual weaknesses, skill gaps, inexperience, rejected applications. When he couldn't get cast in major films, he used the rejection timeline to study acting technique obsessively. When his first movie was a disaster, he analyzed every frame to understand what not to do. When special interest groups blocked his gubernatorial initiatives, he studied their tactics and adapted his approach. The Code's second rule: every obstacle contains the seed of equivalent advantage, but only if you're strategic enough to find it. Most people see barriers and quit. Arnold saw barriers as information data about where to focus next. His ENTJ personality type, characterized by strategic thinking and turning problems into opportunities, made this principle almost instinctive. Where others saw insurmountable disadvantages, Arnold saw uncontested market positions. Rule 3. Pain is information, not limitation. Arnold's third principle: reframe physical and psychological discomfort as feedback rather than ceiling. The bodybuilding gym became Arnold's laboratory for this concept. Most people stop when muscles burn, when exhaustion hits, when the body screams for rest. Arnold trained himself to interpret those sensations differently. The last 3 or 4 reps when your muscles are screaming, when you want to quit, that's where growth happens. Arnold explained in Pumping Iron, most people see that pain as a stop sign. I saw it as a starting gun. He developed a psychological trick. Instead of avoiding discomfort, he chased it. Pain became a signal that he was in the growth zone, the exact place where transformation occurred. This mental reframe was so complete that Arnold reported actually enjoying the burning sensation in his muscles, associating it with progress rather than suffering. But the principle extended far beyond physical training. When business deals fell apart, Arnold didn't interpret failure as a sign to quit. He saw it as information about which approaches didn't work. When political opponents attacked him, he didn't take it personally. He analyzed their strategies for useful intelligence. His low neuroticism, a Big 5 personality trait indicating emotional stability, allowed him to process setbacks without emotional spiral. Where anxious people interpreted failure as character judgment, Arnold interpreted failure as data collection. The movie Junior flopping at the box office? Information that comedy roles had limits for his screen presence. The 2005 special election disaster? Information that confrontational governance didn't work in California. His marriage collapsing after his affair? Information about personal behavior consequences. Every painful experience became tuition in the University of Reality. Arnold's high conscientiousness, another Big 5 trait, meant he systematically cataloged these lessons rather than forgetting them. The Code's third rule: comfort is the enemy of growth. Seek situations that generate productive discomfort, then mine that discomfort for actionable intelligence. Don't avoid pain, decode it. Rule 4. Strategic aggression over random effort. Arnold's fourth principle: focus extreme effort on high-leverage activities, ignore everything else. This was perhaps Arnold's most ENTJ characteristic, the ability to ruthlessly prioritize objectives and execute with commander-like focus. In bodybuilding, Arnold didn't just train harder, he trained smarter. He studied anatomy to understand which exercises produced maximum muscle growth per time invested. He optimized nutrition, sleep, and recovery with scientific precision. He focused obsessive attention on his weakest body parts until they became strengths. But he also ignored entire categories of effort that didn't serve his goals. Social activities that didn't advance his career. Skipped relationships that didn't support his mission. Ended entertainment that wasn't educational. Ignored. I always stayed focused on my vision, Arnold said years later. People thought I was too intense, too single-minded. But that focus was the only way to accomplish what seemed impossible. This principle was most visible in his business strategy. While other bodybuilders spent their prize money on luxury items, Arnold invested in real estate with surgical precision. He identified undervalued properties in emerging Los Angeles neighborhoods, purchased them with leveraged capital, renovated strategically, and flipped for profit. He didn't diversify randomly. He focused on one asset class until he understood it completely, then scaled aggressively. By age 25, his real estate portfolio generated more income than his bodybuilding career. The same framework applied to Hollywood. Arnold didn't audition randomly for any available role. He strategically targeted specific character types: action heroes, strong villains, roles requiring physical presence. He turned down dozens of offers that didn't advance his positioning. Each role was calculated to build toward a specific career arc. In politics, this manifested as issue selection. Arnold didn't try to solve every California problem. He focused on infrastructure, climate policy, and fiscal management. Issues where bipartisan support was achievable and results were measurable. The Code's fourth rule: success isn't about doing everything well. It is about identifying the 20% of activities that produce 80% of results, then executing those activities with overwhelming force while systematically ignoring distractions. Rule 5. Manufacture certainty through preparation. Arnold's fifth principle: obsessive preparation creates the appearance and reality of confidence. Most people attribute Arnold's success to natural charisma or genetic advantages. Arnold understood differently. Perceived certainty came from preparation so thorough that outcomes became predictable. Before every Mr. Olympia competition, Arnold didn't just train his physique, he trained his psychology. He studied every competitor's weaknesses. He practiced posing routines thousands of times until they became muscle memory. He visualized every possible scenario, preparing responses in advance. But the real weapon was psychological warfare. Arnold would approach competitors before shows with friendly conversation designed to plant doubt. "You're looking great," he'd say with genuine warmth. "I'm a bit worried this year. You might actually beat me." Competitors later reported these interactions destroyed their confidence. Arnold seemed so relaxed, so unconcerned, that his opponents assumed he knew something they didn't. By the time they walked on stage, they'd defeated themselves mentally. This wasn't natural talent, it was manufactured certainty through strategic preparation. The principle applied everywhere. Before taking the Terminator role, Arnold spent months studying robotic movement, practicing emotionless delivery, preparing so thoroughly that his performance appeared effortlessly inhuman. Before entering politics, he'd spent over a decade attending policy seminars, befriending strategists, learning governmental mechanics. By the time Arnold executed publicly, he'd already rehearsed privately hundreds of times. What looked like natural ability was actually prepared response. His high openness to experience, a big 5 trait indicating curiosity and willingness to try new approaches, fueled constant skill acquisition. Arnold never stopped studying, never stopped preparing, never stopped finding new frameworks to master. The Code's fifth rule: confidence isn't born, it is built through preparation so exhaustive that failure becomes statistically improbable. Study obsessively, rehearse repeatedly, and by the time you act publicly, you'll have already succeeded privately. Rule 6. Evolve or become irrelevant. Arnold's sixth and final principle: identity is strategy, not destiny. Adapt when contexts change. This was perhaps Arnold's most underappreciated quality: his willingness to completely reinvent himself when circumstances demanded evolution. Most people cling to identity even when it stops serving them. Arnold repeatedly killed successful versions of himself to become something new. The bodybuilder who dominated the sport for 7 years retired at his peak to pursue Hollywood, despite pressure to keep competing. The action star who could demand $25 million per film walked away to enter politics. The governor who could have pursued higher office left to rebuild his personal life after scandal. Each transition required letting go of status, income, and public identity built over years. Most people can't do this. They'd rather decline slowly in a familiar role than risk uncertainty in a new one. Arnold's Enneagram 3W2 personality type, achiever with a helper wing, meant his identity was tied to accomplishment rather than specific roles. As long as he was succeeding at something meaningful, the particular domain didn't matter. This showed in his political evolution. When confrontational governance failed, Arnold completely abandoned his initial approach. He fired ideological advisors, brought in pragmatic moderates, and transformed his governing philosophy. Most politicians would rather lose with their principles intact. Arnold adapted to win. But the principle went beyond career moves. It showed in how Arnold processed personal failure. After his marriage collapsed due to his affair, Arnold could have deflected blame or maintained denial. Instead, he publicly accepted responsibility and started intensive therapy to understand his behavioral patterns. "I had to look honestly at who I'd become," Arnold said years later. "The person I was in my personal life wasn't aligned with my values. So I had to change fundamentally, not just apologize superficially." The Code's sixth rule: successful people aren't attached to past versions of themselves. They view identity as fluid, strategic, and subject to revision when current approaches stop working. Evolution isn't failure, it's intelligence. The Code in action, a synthesis. These 6 principles didn't operate independently, they formed an integrated system that amplified each component. Vision without preparation is fantasy. Preparation without strategic focus is wasted effort. Focus without pain tolerance hits premature limits. Pain tolerance without learning from disadvantages creates stubborn stupidity. And all of this becomes obsolete without willingness to evolve. Arnold didn't just follow these rules occasionally. He applied them systematically across 5 decades and 4 completely different domains. The bodybuilder who visualized championships. The immigrant who weaponized his accent. The actor who prepared obsessively. The politician who evolved strategically. The businessman who focused ruthlessly. The result: a farm boy from Austria became one of history's most successful multi-domain performers. Not through luck, not through natural advantages. Through a coda, systematic approach to achievement that anyone could theoretically replicate. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Arnold's story reveals most people don't want to follow this code. They want success without pain. They want confidence without preparation. They want results without ruthless prioritization. They want transformation without killing their current identity. Arnold's code works. But it requires something most people aren't willing to give: everything. The darker implications. The code's effectiveness raises uncomfortable questions. Can you achieve Arnold-level success while maintaining balanced relationships? While being a present parent? While protecting emotional intimacy? Arnold's affair and family implosion suggest the answer might be no. His single-minded focus, the very quality that built his empire, also destroyed his marriage. His ability to compartmentalize essential for pursuing multiple goals simultaneously allowed him to lie to his wife for over a decade. The code produces results. But it might also produce a specific type of person, someone so focused on achievement that human connection becomes secondary. Someone so comfortable weaponizing advantages that manipulation becomes instinct. Someone so committed to evolution that core values become negotiable. Arnold has spent his post-political years grappling with this tension. His autobiography and interviews show genuine reflection on what the code cost him personally, even as he continues advocating its professional effectiveness. "I achieved everything I set out to achieve," Arnold said recently, "but I also hurt people I loved. The question I'm still working through is whether those two things were necessarily connected, or whether I just failed to apply the same systematic thinking to my personal life that I applied to my career. That question remains unanswered, perhaps unanswerable." The legacy of the code. Today, Arnold Schwarzenegger's principles have influenced millions of people through books, speeches, and social media content. The 6 rules: vision, weaponized disadvantages, productive pain, strategic focus, manufactured certainty, and adaptive evolution appear in countless success frameworks and business philosophies. But most people extract the comfortable parts while ignoring the uncomfortable implications. They love turn weaknesses into strengths. While avoiding sacrifice everything else for strategic priorities, they celebrate obsessive preparation, while ignoring manipulate competitor psychology through calculated deception. The real Code, Arnold's actual operating system, is more ruthless, more single-minded, and more psychologically complex than the simplified motivational version presented in his public communications. Understanding this distinction is crucial. Arnold didn't succeed through feel-good platitudes. He succeeded through systematic application of principles that required extraordinary discipline, uncomfortable choices, and willingness to prioritize achievement over virtually everything else. The Code works. History proves it. But only for those willing to pay its full price, not just the obvious costs of hard work and long hours, but the hidden costs of relationships strained, identities killed, and humanity occasionally sacrificed at the altar of achievement. Arnold Schwarzenegger built an empire. The Code explains how. Whether that empire was worth what it cost is a question each person must answer for themselves.